The bullet punched through my shoulder like a white-hot iron, spinning me into the wooden wall of the railcar. Blood misted over the luggage, and I crashed to my knees, gripping the wound while the whole car exploded into panic. 3 masked men had jumped our westbound train just outside Tucson. Guns up, voices barking for wallets, watches, and anything that glittered. I was riding in the cargo car, guarding a load of silver for the mining company, when they kicked in the door. The first shot went wide. The second didn't. My sight smeared as I pressed hard on the burning hole in my shoulder. Through the open doorway of the racing train, I spotted riders keeping pace out in the desert, more of the gang, making sure nobody slipped off to fetch help. The engine was slowing. I figured the engineer had a pistol jammed against his ribs. That's when I saw him, among the riders running even with the train, holding perfect line with the outlaws, was a chestnut horse I knew like my own hands. My stomach fell harder than the bullet hit. I'd helped break that horse 3 years back. The rider sat tall, hat pulled low, but I'd know that straight backseat anywhere. The way he held the reins, the shine of silver spurs picking up the afternoon sun, every bit of him shouted a name that made me colder than the steel floor beneath me. Thomas. My brother, Thomas. He rode not 50 yards off the rail, close enough for me to see the scar on his left hand from the fight we had over Pawsville. Close enough that, if I yelled, he could hear me over pounding hooves and grinding wheels. Close enough to see me bleeding in this car if he just turned his head. But he never turned. He stared ahead, watching for whatever sign the leader would give. Like he didn't know I was on this train. Like he didn't care that his own brother was dying 20 feet away. The train jerked to a full stop, flinging me into a crate of mining tools. Fresh pain burned through my shoulder, and warm blood soaked my shirt. The masked men were shouting orders now, forcing passengers to line up by the tracks. I heard women crying, men cursing, boots thumping on dirt. Through my dimming vision, I watched Thomas swing his horse and slip behind a rocky ridge with the other riders. Not once did he glance at the train. Not once did he act like I might be here. The bullet hurt bad, but what cut deeper was the thought that maybe, just maybe, Thomas knew exactly where I was. The outlaws took what they came for and rode off into the open desert, leaving behind a train full of shaken folks and one bleeding guard who'd failed to protect a cargo now gone. The engineer hustled to get steam up, but I couldn't wait for a doctor in the next town. If I didn't treat this wound soon, I'd bleed out before we reached anything that passed for civilized. I dragged myself to the doorway and looked down at the ground grinding past. The train was gaining speed again. It had to be now. Teeth clenched, I rolled from the moving car. I hit hard, tumbling over rock and sand until I slid to a stop behind a cluster of cactus. The whistle cried across the empty land as the train curved away, taking my last easy path to safety with it. I was alone now, bleeding, baking under the Arizona sun, and my brother's cold silence burned worse than the hole in my shoulder. Why didn't Thomas stop? The question slammed through my head as I pushed to my feet, leaning on a dead branch like a crutch. We'd fought, sure, but we were blood. Out here, family was supposed to matter. Death came quick and help came slow. Pressing my shirt to the wound, I limped the way the riders had gone. Maybe I was a fool, but I needed answers. I needed to look my brother in the face and hear why he left me to die. Our last argument from 3 months back kept replaying as I stumbled over the hardpan. He'd been angry about the will, that Pa left me the ranch instead of splitting it even. Thomas was always the wild one, gone for months chasing easy money while I stayed and did the work. You were Pa's favorite, he'd slurred, mean with whiskey. Maybe you'll find out what it feels like to be tossed aside. Back then, I figured it was drunk talk. Brothers spit out cruel words when tempers run hot. But now, dragging myself through this godforsaken wash with his indifference fresh in my mind, those words felt less like a threat and more like a promise. The sun sank toward the edge of the world, painting the sky the color of blood. I'd walked for what felt like hours, following the clear marks left by the gang's horses. My shoulder bled less now, but the pain had sharpened, and the world tilted if I moved too fast. Then I heard it, the jingle and thud of a horse coming up behind me. I turned, hope clawing up my throat. Maybe Thomas had come back. Maybe he'd realized what he'd done. But the rider cutting through the heat shimmer wasn't Thomas. I'd never seen him before. And the look on his weathered face said finding me here wasn't luck. He slid off a black mare like a man born in the saddle. Older than me by a good bit, maybe 50, with gray stubble on a face beaten by sun and trouble. His clothes were dusty, but not cheap, and the ivory grip on the revolver at his hip wasn't decoration. "You're Jacob Morrison," he said, not asking. "Thomas figured I might find you out here." My blood went cold despite the heat. Thomas sent this man to me? That meant my brother hadn't just left me by chance. He'd planned something. "Who are you?" I asked, still pressing cloth to the wound. "Name's Samuel Crawford. I've been tracking your brother for near 6 months." He pulled a canteen from his bags and offered it. "Drink. You look rough." I drank, but kept my eyes on him. The way he said Thomas's name made my skin crawl. "Tracking him for what?" I asked. "Murder," he said, voice flat. 3 dead in El Paso, a bank clerk, a pregnant woman, and a 10-year-old boy who got in the way on your brother's last job." The water turned to dust in my mouth. "You're lying." "Am I?" He pulled a folded, wanted poster from his vest. Even from a few steps back, I could make out Thomas's face sketched in black ink, the words wanted dead or alive, and a reward that made my head spin. "Today's train job wasn't his first," Crawford said, watching me close. "It's just the latest, each one bloodier than the last." I stared at the poster, fighting to match the brother I knew with the killer he described. Thomas had been reckless, sure. But murder? A child? "He knew you'd be on that train," Crawford added, eyes steady. "Knew you'd likely try to stop him if you recognized him. That bullet wasn't meant to kill you, Jacob. Just to keep you on the floor while he finished the work and vanished." "But we're brothers," I whispered, mostly to myself. "Blood don't count to a man like Thomas Morrison," Crawford said. "Not anymore. Question is, what are you going to do?" I looked out over the desert where Thomas had ridden. Somewhere out there, he was counting stolen silver while I bled in the sand. The brother who taught me to ride, who stood by me at Pa's grave, who shared 100 small memories under a leaky roof, gone, replaced by someone I didn't know. Someone who left me without a backward glance. "I'm going after him," I said, trying to stand. Crawford hauled me up with a firm grip. "I hoped you'd say that," he answered. "Because there's more about today you need to hear. Something that shows how far your brother's fallen." He helped me onto his horse and led us toward a rocky outcrop where he'd stashed a small camp. Every step set my shoulder on fire, but I held on. I needed to hear the rest. "That silver Thomas took," Crawford said as we reached the camp, "wasn't just any shipment. It was pay for the Copper Creek mine. 300 families counting on that money to feed their kids." He dismounted, helped me down, and started gathering kindling. The sun was falling fast, and night. "Cold out here bites bone deep. But the worst part," he went on, striking a match, "is that Thomas knew those folks. He worked at Copper Creek 2 years back, before he started killing. He knows them by name." The fire caught, shadows jumping across his lined face. I slid against a boulder and tried to take it in. The Thomas I'd grown up with would never steal food from the mouths of children. "There's more," Crawford said, fishing a tin of beans from his bag. "Your Pa's ranch, the one Thomas was sore about losing? He burned it down 3 weeks ago." The world tilted. "What?" "Rode right up and set it alight. Barn, house, even the stock. Neighbors said he laughed while it burned." I shut my eyes and saw the place where we were born, where Ma died bringing Thomas into the world, where Pa taught us both how to work and how to stand tall. All of it ash, because my brother couldn't accept the choices he made. "Why?" I asked, voice thin. "Because he's become the kind of man who wrecks anything he can't control," Crawford said, prying open the tin. "And right now, the thing he can't have is your forgiveness." "My forgiveness?" I stared at him. He nodded toward my shoulder. "That shot wasn't random. Thomas told his men to wound you, not kill you. He wanted you alive to see what he is now, to make you understand that the brother you defended all these years is gone." The pieces slid into place, making a picture I didn't want to face. Thomas hadn't just looked away. He'd choreographed the whole day like a twisted message. "He's camped about 5 miles north," Crawford said, handing me the warm can. "Been waiting there, likely counting on me to steer you his way." Waiting for what? For you. For the final reckoning, good brother versus bad. The story he thinks started the day Pa died and left you the ranch. I ate without tasting, thoughts racing. Everything I believed about Thomas, about us, was crumbling like the charred walls of home. "He could have killed me," I said at last. "He didn't." "No," Crawford said. "Quick death wouldn't hurt enough. He wants you to suffer first. Wants you to see him clearly. Wants your hate to match his." The fire popped, and night swallowed the last light. Somewhere ahead, my brother was waiting. And even with all I'd heard, some small part of me still hoped the boy I knew wasn't fully lost. We rode through the dark, Crawford leading while I fought to stay conscious. He'd cleaned and wrapped my shoulder, but I'd lost too much blood, and every step the horse took sent heat through my bones. "There," he whispered at last, pointing to a cluster of rocks where a faint fire flickered on stone. "That's their camp." I could make out 3 shapes around the glow. One waved his hands like he was retelling the day's robbery. Another counted, likely the silver. The third sat with one leg pulled up, still as a statue. My chest tightened. Thomas always sat like that when he was thinking, plotting his next move. "How do you want it?" Crawford asked, checking his revolver. "I go alone," I said, sliding off the horse while he protested. "This is between me and my brother." "Jacob, that's a death wish," he hissed. "You can barely stand, and he's got 2 armed men." "I don't care." I drew my pistol and checked the chambers with shaking hands. This started as family business. It ended that way. Crawford grabbed my arm. "Listen, the man in that camp isn't your brother. He's a killer who's been planning tonight for months. Don't let blood blind you." I pulled free. "Maybe you're right. Maybe he's past saving. But I need to hear it from him. I need to look him in the eye and know." The walk to the fire felt like a mile, not 100 yards. Each step hurt, but I kept moving. As I got close, their talk came clear. "Think he'll come after us?" one asked. "Oh, he'll come," Thomas said. "Even after everything Crawford told me." My brother's voice sent a chill up my back. "Jacob's too stubborn to let it lie. He'll track us, probably bleeding the whole way, just so he can tell me how disappointed he is." The men laughed. Then Thomas's tone hardened. "When he shows up, don't shoot him quick. I want a word first." I stepped into the firelight, gun down but ready. "Evening, Thomas." All 3 spun, hands sliding toward iron. Thomas lifted a hand, stopping them. "Well, well," he said, standing slow. "Look what the desert spat out." For the first time in 3 months, I looked at my brother's face. It was leaner, the eyes colder, and the smile spreading there made my stomach turn. It wasn't the grin of a younger brother about to get away with mischief. It was a predator's smile. "You look awful," he said, nodding at my blood-soaked shirt. "Maybe sit before you drop." "I'll stand," I said, keeping the pistol low. "We need to talk." "Agreed," he said. He waved at his 2 companions. "Boys, give us a minute. Family business." They hesitated, not keen on leaving him alone with an armed man, but he snapped his fingers, and they drifted to the edge of the light, near enough to help, far enough to pretend we were alone. Thomas sank back by the fire. "I'm guessing you met Samuel Crawford," he said. "What did he tell you?" "That I'm a killer, a thief, a man who burned his own home." "Is it true?" I asked. "Every bit," he said coolly. "Crawford does his homework. I'm sure he showed you the poster." I searched his face for any crack, any hint of regret, but all I saw was a cold pleasure, like he liked watching me hurt. "Why?" I asked, barely above a breath. Thomas laughed, harsh and sharp. "You really don't know? After all this time, you still don't understand what you did to me." "What I did?" I started. "You stole my life," he snapped, hand sliding toward his gun. "Everything that should have been mine, Pa's love, the ranch, the town's respect, you took it. I was the older brother. It should have been me." "You left when you were 17, I said, fighting to stay calm. You ran after silver strikes and card tables. Pa kept me there because I stayed and worked. I left because there was no room for me with perfect Jacob, he spat. You did everything right. You were everything Pa wanted. Try growing up in someone's shadow your whole life and see what it does. The pain in his voice was real. For a heartbeat, I saw the boy he'd been, hurt, jealous, lost. Then his face hardened, and the moment was gone. So you became what folks said you were, I said. You decided to be the villain. I became the one thing I was good at, he said. Letting people down. He drew his gun slow, like a dare. And tonight, I'll let you down for the last time. Don't do this, I said. There's still time. Time for what? Redemption? Forgiveness. He shook his head. You never did get it. I don't want saving. I want you to hurt, like I did every day for 25 years. But as he raised the gun, I caught something in his eyes he tried to hide. Fear, doubt, a flicker of panic. In that split second, I understood there was a piece Crawford hadn't shared. You're not going to shoot, I said, watching his hand tremble on the grip. You need me alive for Crawford's plan. Thomas's eyes widened. I knew I'd hit the mark. You don't know what you're saying. Don't I? I looked past him toward the shadows where his men had moved. Except they weren't his men at all. I recognized them now, bounty hands from El Paso who always worked with Samuel Crawford. How much is he paying you to bring me here, Thomas? Jacob, stop. The train job was real, I said, but the rest was theater. Crawford needed me to believe you were beyond saving, so I'd help him finish you without a second thought. Thomas's gun lowered a hair. For the first time. Tonight, he looked like my brother, scared, lost, drowning. The poster, the story about the dead boy. Lies, I pressed. Crawford needed someone who knew you well enough to find you. Someone you'd let close. He used me as bait. Thomas swallowed, voice cracking. Jacob, what did you really do? What does Crawford want to bury? My brother's shoulders sagged. I saw him kill a family in Tombstone, he said, voice shaking. A man, his wife, their 2 little girls. He was supposed to be tracking the man for rustling. When he found them, Thomas shuddered. He shot them and took their gold. I was hiding in the rocks. I saw everything. And you've been running ever since, I said. 3 months, he nodded. He's chased me across the territory, telling everyone I'm the killer, turning bounty men on me. Today's train job, he looked away. I was desperate. Needed cash to get out of Arizona before he caught up. Behind us, soft steps scraped rock. Crawford and his men were drifting closer, done waiting. When you took that bullet and I rode by, Thomas whispered, I wanted to help. God, I wanted to. But Crawford's men were watching. If I stopped, they'd know we were kin. They'd use you to trap me. I know, I said, and I meant it. He'll kill us both now, Thomas said. You see that, right? He can't let either of us tell the truth. Crawford stepped into the firelight, his 2 rifles flanking him. He wore that same chill smile. Sweet reunion, he said. But curtain time. He lifted his hand like a signal. The first shot cracked the night, mine. My pistol bucked, and the nearest rifleman folded, dropping without a sound. Thomas moved faster than thought, snapping his gun up and firing at the second man. The Outlaw's, Crawford's, not his, scrambled for cover. Crawford dove behind a boulder, returning fire, bullets whining off stone. I stumbled sideways to a saddle-high rock, heat tearing through my shoulder. Thomas slid beside me, eyes wide, breath sharp. You sure picked your moment, he said. You left me no choice. I shot back, racking another round. Save it, he said, leaning out and firing again. The second rifleman screamed, then went still. Only Crawford's shots kept coming, steady, measured, patient. He was good. Too good. We need to move, Thomas hissed. He'll try to flank us. You know his tricks? I've been surviving them for months. We crawled toward thicker cover as bullets spit dust at our heels. Crawford's voice floated out, hard and calm. You boys can die quick, or you can die slow. Your call. He's trying to rattle us, Thomas said. It's working, I muttered, tasting metal. My head swam. Blood loss was catching up. Thomas glanced at my shoulder. You're fading. I'll manage. He gave a small, bitter smile. Same old Jacob, too stubborn to fall. Says the man who wouldn't stop running. Wasn't running, Thomas said. Was staying alive. A shadow slid along the rock edge, Crawford, silent as a snake. Thomas yanked me down just as a shot split the air where my head had been. He fired back, and stone chips rained over us. Crawford didn't spook. He shifted again, hunting the angle. He'll try to separate us, Thomas whispered. Get one of us to peek wide. Then we don't give him clean sight. Or, Thomas said, jaw tightening, we bait him. He looked at me, and I saw the old schemer, the boy who could talk a rattler out of its skin. You sure? I asked. No, he said honestly. But we're out of time. He tore a strip from his shirt and tied it around my arm, cinching it tight. You aim low. He keeps his center high. How do you know? He always fires proud. Thomas lifted his voice. Sam, you still sell that story about justice? Silence answered, then Crawford chuckled. I sell what pays. You killed a family, Thomas said cold. You'll hang for it. Not if no one's left to argue. His steps came closer, careful, patient. Thomas nodded to me. Now. I leaned out just enough and fired low, where stone met shadow. The shot sparked off rock and caught cloth. Crawford cursed, stumbling. Thomas popped up and snapped 2 fast rounds. One hit. Crawford crashed behind the boulder and went quiet. The desert held its breath. Wind hissed through creosote. Somewhere far off, a coyote yipped. Thomas and I waited, guns trained. A minute stretched thin. Then Crawford shifted, trying to crawl. Thomas didn't shoot. He looked at me instead, face unreadable. Your call, he said. My heart hammered. The easy thing was to end it. No more lies, no more running. But an image flashed, Pa standing on the porch, telling us a man's worth is shown by what he won't do. We take him in, I said. Alive. Thomas nodded once, as if he'd expected that answer. On 3, he whispered. 1, 2, we moved as one, sweeping around the boulder. Crawford lay on his side, blood soaking his coat, revolver still in hand. His eyes were pale and mean. Should have let me kill each other for you, he said to Thomas, words thick. Would have been simpler. Maybe, Thomas said, but I'm done being your story. Crawford tried to raise the gun. I kicked it away and pressed my boot on his wrist. It's over, I said. For you maybe, he rasped. Not for him. He cut his eyes at Thomas. Poster still out. Every gunman in the territory wants his head. We'll fix that, I said. You'll tell them. He laughed and coughed red. You think anyone will listen to a dying man? The sheriff will, Thomas said, voice steadying. With the right proof. Crawford's smile curled. What proof? You always keep trophies, Thomas said. Gold from Tombstone. The poster designs you hand to marshals. Records of payments. You're proud of your work. Crawford's gaze flicked, just once, to a leather roll tucked behind the boulder. Thomas saw it. So did I. There, Thomas said. There's our proof. We tied Crawford's hands with his own belt and dragged him to the fire. I was shaking now, the world dimming around the edges. Thomas fed the flames and poured a little water over my bandage to cool it. Stay with me, he said, more plea than order. I'm here, I said, not fully sure. He fetched the leather roll and spilled it open. Inside lay a stack of notes, lists of names and dates, and a heavy pouch that clinked. Thomas opened the pouch and stared. Family rings, a locket with a child's drawing, coin stamped with the Tombstone bank mark. Crawford watched with a flat, hateful stare. You'll hang, Thomas said, closing the pouch. Might even live long enough to hear the rope creak. You won't make it to town, Crawford spat. Not with both of you bleeding and 2 of my men missing their checks. Your men are dead, Thomas said. And I'm not. We waited for dawn, trading the watch. When the pale line of light touched the horizon, we lashed Crawford to a horse and started south. I swayed in the saddle, fighting sleep. Thomas rode close, ready to catch me if I slipped. He didn't speak much. Neither did I. There was too much and nothing to say. Near noon, we reached a small way station. 1 room, a well, and a post where the telegraph line hummed. The keeper stepped out with cautious eyes. Thomas flashed the badge from Crawford's leather roll, stolen, not earned, and said we needed the sheriff in Tucson. The keeper sent a wire. We watered the horses and waited in the shade. Crawford kept quiet, like a snake saving venom. I drifted in and out, waking to Thomas checking the bandage, then slipping again. In the late afternoon, a dust trail showed on the road. 2 deputies and a wagon. They pulled up, hands near their holsters, until they saw Crawford bound and scowling. "Well, I'll be," one deputy said. "You boys sure you want to claim what comes with hauling him in?" "We want a fair hearing," I said, voice raw. "For everyone." We loaded Crawford into the wagon and handed over the leather roll, the pouch, and the lists. The deputies scanned the pages, traded a look, and nodded. "Looks like we've got ourselves a tale," the older one said. "You two best come to town." "He needs a doctor," Thomas said, nodding at me. The deputy took a longer look at my shirt and waved us onto the wagon. The ride to Tucson was a blur of heat and pain, wheels bumping over ruts. I woke in a clean bed to a bright white ceiling and the sharp sting of a needle. A woman's voice, steady kind, told me I'd be all right if I rested. I slept again. When I finally stayed awake, the light through the window said morning. My shoulder felt packed with stone, but no longer on fire. The doctor checked me, nodded, and said the bullet had missed bone but chewed muscle. "You're lucky," she said. "Another inch, and you wouldn't be here." Thomas sat in a chair by the door, hat in his hands. For a long moment, we said nothing. The gap between us was full of years, fights, and fresh ash. "They believe you," I said at last. He nodded. The sheriff found more in Crawford's room at the boarding house. Rings, notes, a map with marks that match old cases. Folks in Tombstone are writing in to identify what he kept. And the poster? They're pulling it down. All of them. He looked older than yesterday. "Doesn't wipe the slate, Jacob. I robbed that train." "We'll fix what we can," I said. "The silver. Most was recovered. The rest," he lifted a shoulder. "I'll work it off if they let me." We sat with the weight of it. Finally, Thomas asked, voice low, "Do you hate me?" I thought of the ranch burned black, of Pa's porch and the lessons taught there, of the bullet he could have aimed to kill and didn't. I thought of him dragging me behind a rock, tying off my arm, standing between me and a killer he'd once trusted. "No," I said, "but I'm not ready to forgive everything." He nodded like he expected no less. "That's fair." A deputy came by that afternoon to say Crawford had confessed to some of it and smirked through the rest. It didn't matter. The papers in the roll and the things in the pouch spoke louder than his mouth. The law would take it from here. A week later, with my arm in a sling and the wound knitting, I walked out of the doctor's office into bright sun. Thomas waited by the hitching rail with 2 horses, my old bay and the chestnut we'd trained together. He handed me the bay's reins, then stared down the street. "Where to?" he asked. "Copper Creek first," I said. "We've got wages to set right." He nodded. We mounted and rode slow, dust curling around the hooves. The town thinned to scrub and then to open land, wind pushing the heat ahead of us. After a mile, Thomas spoke without looking over. "About the ranch." My throat tightened. "We'll rebuild," I said. "If the land will have us." He let out a breath I hadn't noticed he was holding. "All right." The desert stretched wide and hard, the kind that breaks or makes a man. We rode on anyway, 2 brothers under the same sky, the road between us rough, but still there. I didn't know where it would end. I only knew the next mile, the next turn, the next hard thing we could try to set right. And for now, that had to be enough.